Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Sports Talk. This is our special pre-draft episode. I am so happy and thankful to be joined by three knowledgeable guests. Let's get started with them. First off is Bill Carroll, a former guest of the show. He is the COO of Consensus Draft Media, a senior writer for Nuts and Bolts Sports, and a college football and NFL blogger for Zany62 Media. Welcome once again, Bill. How you doing?
Always a pleasure.
Glad to hear it. Very next on our list is a guy who was on one of our original draft episodes. He is a scouting assistant at UNLV. He has experience scouting at all levels of football, and he is our resident special teams expert. Welcome to the show once again, Tyler Fukurota. How you doing, Tyler?
Good, man. It's great to be back. Really appreciate you having me back, Brock.
Absolutely. I'm happy you're here. Lastly, we have a brand new guest providing some excellent insight into this year's NFL draft and their prospects. He is a football podcaster and football analyst. He was also the co-host of the HBCU Pigskin Showdown. Welcome to the show, Jackson Danner. Hello, Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Brock. I appreciate it. And hey, I think it's appropriate that if you're listening to this, you're probably also looking at draft stuff instead of watching the Final Four. So you find yourself in the right place.
Yes, absolutely. Football is life for all of us, and gosh, I'm so happy to be able to live this life. So here's how the show is going to break down for everyone listening at home. We're going to go through a full first round mock draft, followed by some of our takes on the top prospects, day 1, day 2, day 3. We're going to talk about some of your favorite quarterbacks that are going to be coming into the NFL and so much more. Without further ado, let's get started with the first round mock. Now, the rules for this first round mock is that I'm going to name a team that in the current draft order. After that, we're all going to say who the team should pick, not who they will pick. We're going to have a little talk, a little debate. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we jump into it, just a quick recap of the NFL offseason so far. It has been an offseason of a lot of movement and trades, most notably as the trades within the first couple of days of free agency or the first couple of days of the offseason. Most notably, Russell Wilson, the Broncos. You had Khalil Mack headed to the Chargers, Carson Wentz headed to the Washington Commanders now, and so much more. A lot of moves in free agency, absolutely, Bill. And thus, the draft order has shifted phenomenally. There is a lot of teams with multiple draft picks capped off by the Eagles with 3 first-rounders. With that being said, let's just jump right into it with the first pick in the NFL draft, headed to the quote-unquote worst team in the league, if you're Jim Irsay, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now I'm going to pass it to you, Bill. Who do you think the Jags should select with their first overall pick?
Yeah, they should go ahead and take the best player who's available. And the best player available, in my opinion, is Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, I want to ask you a question about that because Kayvon Thibodeaux has caused a lot of controversy in this draft. Of course, he has the physical attributes, but a lot of people are questioning both his senior season and there are some questions about his work ethic. What do you say to that?
Well, his senior season, other than when he was hurt, I'm not sure what they're talking about. He's every year of his career, he's been productive when healthy. He has been a player that demands double teams, demands you slide protection to him. He's going to free up and create opportunities for other players. And unlike a guy like Hutchinson, he didn't have an Ojabo, right? He didn't have a guy that made teams worry about the other side. Every team began and ended every offensive game planning meeting with talking about Kayvon Thibodeaux. And for those who have questions about if he loves ball, so he's the #1 consensus pick in the country. Everybody says he's the best player in the country. He has a high ankle sprain. What does he do? Does he shut it down and say, I'm going to work on getting ready for the combine and I'll see you guys in the funny papers? It's been a slice. No, he rehabs and comes back and plays, right? Which can only hurt him. It can't help him, right? So a lot of the stuff that you're hearing is just that. It's stuff. The term we would have used back in the military would be Bravo Sierra. I don't put much stock, particularly this time of year, in almost anything that I hear. This is lying season. And we're now in peak lying season. You're going to hear lots of crazy things in the last few weeks leading up to the draft. So I feel very comfortable with Kayvon Thibodeaux. His high school coaches and high school teammates have nothing but great things about him. His college coaches, his college teammates have nothing but great things to say about him. Like I said, I think a lot of what you're hearing is what I call counterintelligence. right? Teams hoping that some team will say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't take him, and he'll slide to them. So yes, I think he's a must draft.
Yes, and it wouldn't be the first time we've seen something like that happen on draft day. Two notable examples would be Warren Sapp at Larmonton. So guys who went on to have phenomenal careers. Obviously, Sapp finished with a Super Bowl ring, I believe close to $80 million in career earnings. Tunsil's on his fat second
and
contract.
in the Hall of Fame.
Yes,
right?
And he's in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. And, so we'll see what happens with that. I would like to bring up the fact that if the Jacksonville Jaguars do select Kayvon Thibodeau, it would be their third pass rusher that they selected in the first round in the last 5 years, I believe, with Josh Allen and Clavon Chason being the other two. I'm going to throw it to you, Tyler. If you're the Jaguars, who are you picking?
See, I agree with what Bill had said. I do like the idea of best player available. I mean, if you are the team that holds the number one pick in the draft, you should always go with the best player available. However, although I do find Kayvon Thibodeau intriguing as a prospect, I'm not saying that this guy is number one on my board, but I do believe that they go with an edge rusher, but his name is Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. Aiden Hutchinson intrigues me because I do believe technically, like in a technical sense, is a little more advanced than Kayvon Thibodeau is. Kayvon Thibodeau brings a lot more tools athletically and strength-wise as well. But Aiden Hutchinson, I like how he uses his hands as a pass rusher. I do believe he's a little stiff off the edge, but does show great bend off the edge. He has a high motor, just plays through the end of the whistle, and he'll be a great locker room guy. Hear nothing but good things about how great of a teammate he is. A great work ethic. I mean, those things just can't be coached. But like to your point, the Jaguars have spent first round picks in recent years on pass rushers. However, Chason just has not produced as a first round pass rusher. Now I could have gone with Evan Neal here, which has also been in the mix as well. But with them currently franchise tagging Cam Robinson, I mean, that just sets him in as the left tackle of 2022. So I'm going to go here with Aiden Hutchinson.
Gotcha. And I would like to bring up the fact that if they do go with either Thibodeau or Hutchinson, that would be yet another first-round pick spot defender. Obviously, I brought Josh Allen and Kayvon Chason. They also spent the 10th overall pick, I believe, on C.J. Henderson, a player who's not even on their team anymore. So they have a lot riding on this pick. Let's throw it to Jackson. Who are you taking if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars?
We're off to a very unified start because I've got yet another different guy than Tyler and Bill. I've got Trayvon Walker is who I think they should pick first overall, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Look at a guy like Micah Parsons, where a lot of how helpful he is because of the versatility of where you can line him. He is mostly used outside the tackle, but he also had 105 snaps over the B gap and 97 over the tackle. He's a solid defensive tackle, a solid defensive end. He can drop back in a fire zone or as a creeper comfortably. I love Hutchinson. You can park him at the edge and know that he's going to be a playmaker for a long time, but I love the versatility of Walker more than anything.
Fair enough. And that is a very interesting pick. Obviously, Trayvon Walker's stock has risen a lot over the past couple of weeks, with a lot of people having Walker selected as the number 2 overall pick by the Detroit Lions. We'll get to that team in a second. I do like the fact that you three are here, the 4 of us, and we all have diverse thinking, because I have a pick that is completely opposite of all of you, even that's the fact that's the opposite side of the ball, and that is obviously the left tackle, Evan Neal, out of Alabama. I really like him a lot. He was phenomenal in this past season where they made the college football playoff. He's very strong, very sturdy. And to me, he's going to be a guy that explodes into this league. A guy like Rashawn Slater last year, a guy like Trent Williams did coming out of Oklahoma. I like him a lot. With that being said, another reason why I took him is the fact of what I've said previously, the fact that Jacksonville has spent a lot of capital both on defense and edge rushers in the past several years. I really think when you have a talent like Trevor Lawrence, of course, he had a really awful rookie season, but when you have Urban Meyer as a head coach, that's bound to happen, right? So when you have a guy like that, Cam Robinson, I think, was just a security blanket. That's why they franchised him. If you think that you have your left tackle of the future, you give him a big extension. That's what happened to Ronnie Stanley. That's what happened to David Bakhtiari. Trent Williams, obviously, he got his big deal. Andrew Whitworth just recently retired, but he got his big deals both in Cincinnati and in Los Angeles. I don't think they have that much faith in Cal Robinson. And once you're able to kind of get rid of his big contract off the tag, you're going to have a lot more money to spend on a lot more players. And I think the main priority, again, is to surround Trevor Lawrence with as much talent, as much protection as you can on his rookie contract. So that's why I'm going with Neal. Great start today. Let's throw it to the Detroit Lions, the number 2 overall pick. Obviously, they spent last year's first round pick on Penei Sewell. A very interesting decision considering they already have Taylor Decker. They're going to move Sewell to the right. Didn't work out. Decker got hurt, so they moved him back to the left where he had an outstanding rookie season. Second overall pick, I'm going to throw it to Tyler first. If you're the Detroit Lions, who are you taking?
So for the Detroit Lions, I mean, obviously they need help on both sides of the ball at any position. But right here, I have them taking Kayvon Thibodeau. And Kayvon Thibodeau, like we mentioned before, is a prospect with elite level tools, athletically, strength-wise, with his size. I mean, I like him as a pass rusher personally. Just needs to clean up some things technically. First of all, using his hands. But I think he shows great bend off the edge. I think there's a lot to work with. I mean, with the noise about his, his motor, does he love football? I mean, from the outside looking in, there's not too much that says that, he doesn't love football. I don't know him personally. I've never talked to him, but just going based off of his talent and the tools that he has, I'm going with Kayvon Thibodeau.
All right, that's a very interesting pick considering I like the pick, considering the fact that they just lost Trey, and of course I'm going to forget his name, Trey Flowers. Right, they just lost him. They had one of the more poor pass rushes in last season, so very, very interesting pick. I'm going to throw it to Bill. Obviously, Thibodeau was your number 1. Who's going to be your number 2?
Yeah, well, this is where I have Aiden Hutchinson going, and this is essentially the dream draft, right, for Lions fans. They've been salivating about the thoughts of getting Aiden Hutchinson last year, right? They were excited about if he'd come out last year. They wouldn't have taken him this early, but they would have loved to have had him last year. He grew up rooting for the team, and we all know the story, right? It all aligns almost too perfectly, but all the things that were said about his personality also match the team's personality. Look at what Aaron Glenn is like, right? Look at what Jason Campbell is like. Look at the coaching staff. They're all basically versions, personality-wise, of the same guy, right? It's all lunch pail. You punch me in the face, I punch you in the face. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but it works because for them, it's true. I mean, this is a guy who opened his press conference in the case of Coach Campbell talking about biting kneecaps. Who's more kneecap bitey in the whole draft than Aiden Hutchinson? Who's more try hard? Who's more get there early, stay late? I mean, he's all that. He doesn't have elite physical traits at the position. He has very good physical traits at the position. He has everything is there enough, but he's not one of those guys where it's like, oh my God, that guy's a freak, right? He doesn't have any of that stuff. He doesn't have the stuff that makes you just go when you watch the tape, when you look at his testing, when you look at his the only thing that really jumps out to you is how productive he's been. And some of that is due to his just unstoppable effort. And he's going to fit in very well with the culture, the coaching staff, the teammates that'll surround him. It's, like I said, almost too perfect.
Absolutely. So I like that pick a lot. I'm going to go with somebody else, which is Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. I know that's kind of right? I know everyone's kind of like, whoa. Now let me explain. To me, the Detroit Lions, again, have a lot of holes, but they do have 2 first-round picks. And I do believe that once you get later on, you're going to find a lot more value. To me, Dean is the best linebacker in this draft, especially when you look at a position like linebacker and Detroit Lions. Maybe it's me, but I thought Alex Anzalone was getting burnt to a crisp every play last season. You have a guy like Dean who's coming in with that Kirby Smart knowledge. He's a guy that can communicate on defense, a guy who just has the explosive raw talent to read plays, make plays, and change games. I know you all are looking at me like, wow, Brock, what kind of drugs did you do this morning? But I love Dean a lot. Maybe that might just be my personal love for the player. I felt that he was a keystone of that entire Georgia defense. Of course, you have 5 stars lined up all over the field. But he was that factor that took them from being there to being national champions. And therefore, I think he's the type of guy that can take Detroit from being bottom to at least mid-range as they continue their rebuild. So with that being said, I'm going to throw it to you, Jackson. Who are you taking if you're Detroit?
I've got Aiden Hutchinson. As Bill said, it's almost too perfect of a fit with that. Your team's mentality has to be a reflection of the mentality of your city. And Detroit, obviously, lunch pail and hard hat. And Aiden Hutchinson describes just that. I can't tell you anything you don't already know about him, but I mean, it's just a perfect fit and a dream come true for Wolverine/Lions fans.
Absolutely. So I'm just before we jump to number 3, I'm going to warn you. My third one's pretty conservative, but from here on out, my picks in the draft are going to be some eye openers. So I mean,
more eye opening than Kobe Dean second overall. Should I?
First of all, I just want to ask if Derwin James dropped to 17, and he's one of the best players in his draft. So maybe I'm either a genius or the most idiotic person in the world. Only time will let us know.
I'm a Kobe Dean fan, but I thought I was high on him. Wow.
Well, I'm either gonna prove I should be a GM or I should never touch foot in any NFL office ever in my life. So I would like to add just one real quick thing. I know you meant Dan Campbell, but you said Jason Campbell. That just brought back some horrible flashbacks from when Washington.
It really did. It really did for me, actually, because Jason Campbell. We'll do this another time, but he's on my list of like guys I loved way too much who ended up not panning out. I did so much work on Jason Campbell. I fought tooth and nail, and I was so excited when Washington traded back up to get him to 23. I was like, yes, it's a perfect situation. And then, of course, the coach that drafted him left the next year because the team is cursed. And sure enough, he had 4 different coordinators in 4 seasons, and there's not been a Hall of Fame quarterback who's had 4 coordinators in 4 seasons. Like, that's not conducive to growth. Oh, well, sorry. Yes, it's trauma. That was trauma you heard when I said
exactly.
Dan Campbell.
Exactly. Jason Campbell has probably altered the course of U.S. history and football history in general. Of course, his teammates, Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown, went in the first top 5 picks. Obviously, Ronnie Brown was a part of that Wildcat offense down in Miami. And, of course, his head coach, Tommy Tuberville, sucked after 2004 and went to Texas Tech, was bad. Stanley was bad.
I love it. Tuberville's catching strays.
Yes. I'm sorry, and now the man's a senator. So good job, Jason Campbell, for getting somebody a job when you let a lot of people, go unemployed. Moving on to number 3, we got the Houston Texans. Now I'm gonna start this one with somebody that I think I've had as a number 1 player in my top 10. Not anymore. He's dropped a little bit, but not too far. And that is Kyle Hamilton of Notre Dame. Now, Kyle Hamilton has suffered recently due to what people are considering slow 40 times coming in. I believe at best of 4.7, so on and so forth. However, I think he's going to be the prototype hybrid linebacker for the next 10 years to come. Really high on him. I was very impressed throughout his entire career. To me, in his 1 year under Marcus Freeman, he took an incredible step for what was already an impressive junior season. And if you look, I think that he's going to get burnt. Just put on the Florida State tape and see how he tracks the ball down. I believe it was thrown by the quarterback well after Travis, not Mackenzie Milton. I could be wrong with my memory. Overall, I think he's going to be a very versatile piece on defense, especially in an era where defensive players, especially safeties, are being thrown all over the field. And therefore, he is my number 3 overall pick. I'm going to throw it to you, Bill. Who are you taking for number 3 for Houston?
Yeah. And I don't fault you for courage. Like you don't, your heart doesn't pump Kool-Aid. I love that about you.
Never.
For me, the player I would take there is actually Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I think that, you can talk yourself into a lot of players there. Neal is a guy that could certainly go there. Even Charles Cross is a guy that I think some teams will consider it that early. And I'm a Kyle Hamilton fan, but I think people are a little too high on him. And we all saw the Florida State game, but that pass was very interceptable, I think would be the best way to put it. You didn't have to be a super, super great player. You just had to see that ball. And it was, pick a term, wounded quail, disoriented duck, like pick whatever term you prefer. If you're a good player and you're playing deep middle safety, you should have been able to play on that ball. But he is versatile. He is very smart. He's not super athletic. And I saw that on tape, and it was confirmed for me when the testing came out. I think people were comparing him to the wrong bunch of safeties because you heard like these wild, sort of very pie in the sky comparisons. Kerry Rhodes is very much closer to who he is. And that's a good player. Guy played like 12 years in the league, went to like 2 or 3 Pro Bowl. He's going to be a very good player. I just think people are a little too high. And I'm a fan. Like, I like him, but I like him for what he is, not what people think he is. But Sauce Gardner is a guy who can play zone and man, has length, has strength, very good tackler. Ball skills are maybe not elite, but good. Feet are very good. Hips are very good. There's some technique things that they're solid, but could be refined a little bit more. Like it's like you could see that he's almost all the way there. And if he's coached even somewhat well, I think you're talking about a guy that plays at a high level for a decade plus, goes to probably 5, maybe even 6 Pro Bowls, is an all-pro first team twice. I think there's a lot to like there. I think worst case scenario, you're getting a guy that's like Trufant level. Best case scenario, you're getting a guy that, pushes towards maybe not quite Hall of Fame, but close, close.
That's fair. And I would like to mention when he talked about the quail duck throw, I just call that Mike Norvell's offense. Moving on. Tyler,
Coaches catching strays is a real feature of your show, I see.
Hey, maybe it's just my disdain for Florida State selecting Norvell over Deion Sanders. But that's neither here nor there. Tyler, if you're Houston, before we move on, I'd like to add, I agree with everything you said about his accolades. That's most likely going to happen once he leaves Houston because they are a mess right now. Tyler, if you are Nick Cassero, who are you taking?
Well, I think the Texans are in a pretty interesting spot here because you just traded away your franchise quarterback who did not want to be in Houston. And fortunately for them, in the 3rd round last year, you pick up a guy, Davis Mills, who had good traits, but nothing that really stood out to you. However, he did overperform last year, better than expected. There's a lot to be excited as a Houston Texans fan, to what's to come from the quarterback position. But you're in a spot where you can literally take any top talent here and it will make an immediate impact. I'm going to agree with you, Brock, and I'm going to go with Kyle Hamilton. Just from a measurable standpoint, he has elite measurables. He stands at 6'4", 210, 215, I believe. I think he has great instincts for the ball. Play speed, I think his play speed is better than what he tested at, what I believe was a 4.64. I do agree he has great hips. Even though the testing numbers will disagree with me, I do believe he can play the boundary and he can play with the field and cover 2 sets. I do believe he can play single high. I think he's a good tackler. I think where I find him overrated is, how physical people think he is. I do think he shows willingness, but I don't think he's overly physical. But just as a prospect, like Bill said before, I think his ceiling is very high. But his floor, like at worst, I do agree with the Trufant level floor. That's the worst he'll probably be. Trufant wasn't a bad player for the Atlanta Falcons in his early years. But I do believe that there is close to Hall of Fame potential. But I think there just needs to be some coaching that needs to go into his game. But Kyle Hamilton, I don't think he's a once-in-a-lifetime player. But I do think for this class, he stands above a lot of prospects.
Fair enough. I do just want to mention before I throw it to you, Jackson, that the number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, so the Lions, the Texans, the Jets, and the Giants all have 2 first-round picks. However, the Texans, Jets, and Giants have both picks inside the top 15. So it will be interesting to see where the Texans go first and also where they go at 13 if they decide not to trade it. Jackson, we'll throw it to you. If you have the third overall pick, who are you taking?
I'm also going to go with Kyle Hamilton. The reason being is that, like you said, Tyler, you could pick almost any of these guys and they make an immediate impact. You take Garrett Wilson, immediate improvement. Evan Neal, immediate improvement. Derek Stingley, immediate improvement. You get the idea. But with Kyle Hamilton, he's a playmaker that you can't really take out of your game of your game plan as a safety, right? Because I mean, it's awesome if you get Ahmad Gardner, you lock down one receiver, but hey, doesn't really do you any good if your opposite corner and your nickel aren't that great. So congrats, you knocked out one. But hey, let's get a guy that can go the laterally across the field and be a playmaker. I think Kyle Hamilton fits that description.
Absolutely. I would like to mention before we move on to the fourth overall pick. Well, actually, we can move on to the fourth overall pick right now. That I am very high on Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I loved his tape coming out of Cincinnati, and that's why I have him going number 4 to the New York Jets. To me, the Jets have a lot of holes that need to fix, but they also have a very young core. I'm not going to go through all the things I love about him. Bill's already basically said everything I like. I just want to say the fact that if you look at who their head coach is and Robert Saleh, they are going to need a lockdown corner, and especially when they had Richard Sherman during their Super Bowl run, how excellent that defense is. Of course, they have some other pieces that they need to acquire as well. I just think a guy like Sauce Gardner, a guy who can shut down receivers, is going to open up some of the play of their pass rushers, most notably Quinnen Williams, coming up this next season, and therefore I'm going with Mr. Sauce. Jackson, throwing it to you. If you're the Jets at number 4, who are you taking, considering the fact that you have another first-round pick coming down the road, and I believe you have 4 picks in the top 50. So with that being said,
Lots of Texans in this one, which is nice, and the Jets certainly need him. I'm also going to go with Sauce. We're just on the same page tonight. The reason being is that having a more head coach with a defensive background, I think he knows the importance of having at least one lockdown corner and being able to take care of whatever receiver you need to. So, I mean, it's going to be hard to argue. I know, yes, the competition wasn't as good, right? For Sauce, he did lack Power 5 competition being at Cincinnati, but he has all the physical skills at 6'3" and 200. Fluid, tough. He's got swagger. And with NFL coaching, I'm sure he can develop into a clear-cut CB1.
Absolutely. Tyler, I'm going to throw it to you. You're the Jets. Who are you taking?
I'm going to agree with that pick. I'm going to go with Ahmad Sauce Gardner at 4. Again, another DB with elite measurables for his position. 6'4", a great length. And for a guy his size, I mean, he moves well. He tested well, ran a 4.41 40 at the combine. I believe that is in the top 5 fastest for someone his size or someone of that height. But coverage wise, I think he's got good coverage skills. I believe he's a fluid player. I think he's got very good hips for someone his size. Something I was actually really impressed with was his click and close ability with the levers that he has as well. You don't see too many DBs moving the way he does at that size. I mean, he moves like a 5'11" corner at 6'4". I just don't think this is a pick that you can go wrong with. And he'll improve that New York Jets defense from day one, I believe.
I'm glad the 3 of us are all in agreement for the Jets. And I like to say that the 4 of us are all in agreement that Sauce Gardner would be our first cornerback off the board, which is very, very interesting considering the fact that coming into the season, Derek Stingley Jr. was the consensus number 1 corner in the draft. Before I throw it to Bill, I just want to add the fact that he was coached by Luke Fickell up in Cincinnati, the former defensive corner out at Ohio State. So he does have a lot of wonderful football education that he's bringing.
He was also coached by Marcus Freeman.
Absolutely. That's right, at the DC at Cincinnati before he came over to Notre Dame. So he has a lot of great coaches influencing him as well. So, Bill, you're the Jets. Sauce Gardner's already off the board to the Texans. Who are you taking with the Jets?
Daryl Stingley Jr. And as you mentioned, he was everybody's number one, some people's number one overall prospect at one point, right? So people who work in like the Devi area were like, this guy's a future number one overall. And a combination of a couple of nagging injuries and frankly, looking like he was playing not to get hurt at times, ended up turning, what should have been a sort of coronation into people having some question marks about it. I think that if you're satisfied with the progress of that Liz Frank injury in terms of it healing, and obviously that's the one thing I don't have access to is medicals, but if indeed you're satisfied with the medicals, we're talking about a guy who's a top 5 talent in almost any draft you can imagine, who, I mean, look at the practice tape with Jamar Chase, right? Where he and Jamar Chase are going at each other like crazed dogs, and he's giving Chase fits many of the time. His ability to mirror and match a receiver is, I mean, he's going to really, 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 really excite somebody's defensive backs coach, because you don't have to help him against anybody. There is no receiver in football where you have to give him help. You can put him on, name somebody, right? Whoever it is you're thinking, you can just drop him on that guy and say, take care of that. I'm not saying he'll never get burned, because, you're going to get burned if you play long enough, but he's going to get burned not that often. And as often as not, he's going to take that receiver away. And if you do try to get the ball over there, he's going to get his hands on it. Elite level ball skills, elite level body control, tremendous athletic ability. Like I said, the only things you have to be a little bit worried about is, he had a couple of injuries, one of which was minor, and the other one is the one you're worried about, the Liz Frank. And yeah, he definitely looked at sometimes like, he's like, let me not play too hard. It looked like he was trying to sort of, keep everything together until the season ended. And if that's the case, I sort of understand it. He's, your body is your business. And, if you get hurt again, now you go from a guy that's had 1 or 2 injuries to injury prone. And injury prone means stock down, and now you don't make the money you would have made because you're not getting drafted where you would have been drafted. So yeah, I still think he's an elite level talent.
Yes, I just want to add on to your point with that, the fact that the 2019 LSU National Championship team, arguably one of the greatest teams in all college football of all time, he was an absolute baller that season, alongside the fact of the practice tape. Also want to consider the fact that the 2020 and 2021 LSU teams were not competitive at all. I believe they had a bowl ban in 2020 anyway in the COVID season. So that's just another thing to think about when in terms of Stingley's, not always the word heart, that's not what I'm trying to say at all. Just willingness to put it on the line for a team that is clearly not in a position to do anything. Moving on to the 5th overall pick. This, I would throw to you, Tyler, first, because you are a Giants fan. Giants just now they have a brand new GM and brand new head coach, both from Buffalo. Obviously, head coach is the offensive-minded Brian Dable. A lot of holes to fix. They can fix a big one right here with the 5th overall pick. Who are you taking?
So before I start, I want to say, Bill, I completely agree with your assessment of Stingley, 100%. And he would actually be my pick here at number 5. But with his injury history, I'd be willing to take that gamble that his stock will fall and he'll be there at 7. So I will go ahead and say that I would take Ikem Ekwonu at number 5. Now, I love Evan Neal as a prospect, just based on his measurables, his movement for his size, shows great bend for that size. However, the Giants already have left tackle in Andrew Thomas, where we spent a 4th overall pick on him, and he had actually played pretty well last year and is showing improvement continually. Now, Ikem Ekwonu is also a tackle prospect, but one that can also move into guard. A lot of people see him as an interior offensive line prospect because of his lateral movement skills. However, I think he's a guy that can play both. He can be a swing tackle. He can play inside. The Giants just lost Will Hernandez to free agency. That's not to go without saying that he, had subpar play. We've been missing good play on the interior. Ike Emekwonu offers, great athleticism as an interior lineman, good play strength. I think he plays with very good hand timing for his punch. Just a very intriguing prospect. I think, he offers a lot that much needed help on the offensive line. If you need him to go out and play tackle, he'll go out and play tackle. If there's an injury to the interior, he can step right in and play right or left guard, in my opinion.
Fair enough. I'm going to throw it to you, Jackson. If you're the Giants, considering the fact that you do have the second first rounder at 7, who are you taking at 5?
Brock, I'm also going to go with Ike Emekwonu. The reason being is that Andrew Thomas has been a little bit disappointing. I'm sure you agree with Tyler. Definitely not the guy, the caliber that they thought they were going to get. So whether you want to put Emekwonu at tackle and maybe kick Thomas inside or vice versa, you can always do that. Or have him, have Thomas move out to right tackle and Emekwonu at left. Something like that to improve the offensive line. This new leadership team for New York has been very clear that they believe in Daniel Jones. And I believe it was the owner, right, that said, we've done everything we could to screw up this guy with so many different play callers and all that. So, hey, let's make sure that DJ is not going to get hit. And I'm going to address maybe a receiver at pick number 7, if that gives you a hint.
Fair. All right, Bill, I'm going to throw it to you. If you are the Giants, again, same situation, you're for sure you have another pick at 7. Who are you taking at 5?
Yeah. And it looks like we're finally all of the same accord. I also would take Ike Emekwonu. I think that despite being on the slightly shorter side, I think, look at all the shorter left tackles who succeeded. David Bakhtiari, 6'4 1/4. Jason Peters, right? 6'4 1/8. All of the shorter tackles that have succeeded were elite level athletes, freak show athletes. And guess what? That's Ike Emekwonu. Andrew Thomas is a decent athlete. And he's gotten by. One, he's played on very good offensive lines in college, but also he has his technique and maturity carried him through in his college career. And now maturity is no longer a big deal. Guy is 31, right? Okay, great. When you were 22 and everyone else was 19 and 20, your maturity, your physical abilities, that was good, but not exceptional, but combined with great technique, carried the day. Now, when you're seeing, the guys that Washington can roll out at you, Montez Sweat can run step for step with every one of the receivers who plays for the Giants. And I'm not even joking. Like, he literally can run step for step for 40 yards with every receiver that the Giants can roll out there. And now you're asking Andrew Thomas, who's a decent athlete, to block that kid. Like, good luck with that. So it's time to get a little freaky. And Ike Emekwonu can give you that opportunity. And yes, as was said by Jackson, I think you nailed it. You either see if you can kick him inside, or I think more likely he goes over to the right side. And you probably draft another guard, because as we all know, guards can be had, any place pretty much in the draft. You don't have to take them early, and you can find really great ones all throughout.
Yes, absolutely. And before I start with my assessment and my pick, I do just want to add, just to show how much of a dumpster fire the Dave Gettleman era was in that draft where Andrew Thomas was selected 4th overall. He was, I believe, the 4th, one of 4 offensive tackles taken, or one of 5. The other being Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Willis, Tristan Wirfs, and then Austin Jackson to the Dolphins. So, I'm not saying that it wasn't the right selection. No, I am actually. That was the worst offensive tackle selection they could have made, considering the fact Wirfs is a Pro Bowler, and the fact that Willis and Becton have shown to be phenomenal tackles. I do want to bring up the fact that you said, Bill, about the pass rushers in the NFC East. Now, the main attention for pass rushers has been the AFC West. However, in the NFC East, you still have guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, obviously Michael Parsons, who's becoming one of the elite defenders in the NFL, Chase Young, Montez Sweat. You also got Josh Sweat, who just signed an extension out in Philadelphia. And they have multiple first-round picks. They're probably one of them is going to be used on an edge rusher because I think they're going to try to replace Derek Barnett. With that being said,
you bring up Parsons. Parsons could outrun any of the receivers that they have in the Giants roster. Like not a single one of them could stay with Micah Parsons. Woo, good luck.
Right. Kadarius Toney better hope that he can juke him out, and that's a tall task in its own. But with that being said, I'm in agreement with every single one of you. I have also taken Ikem Ekwonu out of NC State with my 5th overall pick. I'm not going to go into detail why, because you guys have basically said everything. I do just want to bring up this point where in the run game, he is very, very impressive. Not only the fact of first point of contact, he's able to blow up defenders off the line. The fact that he's able to get to that second level with a lot of explosiveness, agility, and create holes. If you guys want to look up the highlights of Solomon Knight, the running back at NC State, and he made some very, very, very impressive runs. However, every one of those runs was running on the left side, right? Running right behind Ekwonu. With that being said, like Tyler has said, they haven't done enough, the Giants, in order to protect the guy, Daniel Jones. They also just gave very nice money to Tyrod Taylor as well. So we don't know where they go with the quarterback position. What we do know is that either man is going to be under fire if they don't take Ekwonu. And if they want to revitalize or utilize any of whatever Saquon Barkley has left, I think this is the perfect pick, especially considering the fact that Saquon, I believe, has 1 year left, and that is his 5th-year option. With all those being said, if you want to have Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, Saquon, all those boys explode onto the scene like it was intended in the last offseason, Ekwonu is my pick. So, wow, this is interesting. We're all in agreement for once. This is new and probably the last time that will happen. Moving on to number 6, a team that I have a lot of disdain for because I don't like any of them. Most importantly, I don't like the head coach, Matt Rule. And I'm sure, Jackson, we haven't talked before in detail about this. Tyler and Bill, it is the Carolina Panthers. Just before we get started, I want to say that Carolina doesn't have a pick in the 2nd and also the 3rd, I believe, due to a multitude of trades. I believe there's a Sam Darnold trade for both of them. I could be wrong on that. So they're going to need to nail this 6th overall pick. A lot of holes, most notably everywhere but receiver. With that being said, who are you taking with the number 6 overall pick, Jackson?
I'm going to go ahead and take Evan Neal, a guy that you took 1st overall, is a plug and play at left tackle, right? They certainly need the help. They do need to get the quarterback situation figured out. I don't know if they address that later on in this draft with maybe a day 3 pick that they want to take a gamble on. But this is not the year, or at least the time of this year, to address the quarterback need after all this shifting around. So I'm going Evan Neal.
Absolutely. And I just want to bring up the fact that Evan Neal's position at left tackle is a position that they have been sorely missing for a long time. They tried to fill that a couple years ago at Russell Okung. Didn't really work out. Definitely wasn't happening last season, especially the fact that they don't have any idea where they're going at quarterback besides Sam Ghost Darnold. That would be a huge, huge addition for them. With that being said, Tyler, are you going with Evan Neal or are you going with somebody else?
So I'm going to agree with Jackson here. I am also going with Evan Neal. The quarterback situation, yes, they have a sticky situation with Sam Darnold at quarterback. They did trade away some valuable assets for Sam Darnold, or valuable draft capital, I should say. But I'm a big believer in building the team before getting your quarterback rather than getting your quarterback, then building the team. So that's why I'm going with Evan Neal. That's your blindside protector for your future franchise quarterback. Elite measurables at the position. One of my only things against Evan Neal is his weight. It is a thing where dropping weight is much more difficult than, gaining weight. And one issue that Evan Neal has is maintaining his weight. I believe he measured in at 341. However, like a past Carolina Panther player, a problem he had was maintaining his weight. And if you know who I'm talking about, it's Kelvin Benjamin. But other than that, I think Evan Neal is an interesting prospect. I think he's has the potential to be a good left tackle in the NFL. Movement wise, I think he moves well for his size. However, when you compare it to an elite level tackle in the NFL, my question is, does he possess that lateral movement that an elite level left tackle in the NFL has? Can he get to that point? So with the 6th overall pick, I'm going with Evan Neal.
Gotcha. I do just want to add in case people are thinking about that Kelvin Benjamin shot. Kelvin Benjamin lastly played for Tyler's New York Giants, where he was quote unquote a Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end. And as we all know, that didn't work out. And eventually Benjamin was cut and his head coach, Joe Judge, was fired. So throwing it to you, Bill, to the Carolina Panthers, 6th overall pick. Who are you taking?
So I'm going to deviate slightly. Same position, but different player. I'm going to go with Charles Cross. And I like Evan Neal a great deal. I really do. Like, he's a top 10 player. But I think Cross is, if you're trying to protect the quarterback specifically, he's frankly better at it. He's a better pass protector. He's not quite the powerhouse that Evan Neal is, but he's more nimble. He has better change of direction. Neal's a very good athlete, like, especially to be that size. But as was just pointed out, he lost a fair amount of weight. I'm always a little bit suspicious in what I call the dash for the cash, when a guy who's been playing all along at 350 something, darn near 360, and all of a sudden he shows up 337, with a new commitment to fitness, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes it works out. And the guys like Bruce Smith, right? Bruce Smith had played at 298 at Virginia Tech and tried to play it right around 300 his first year in the league and realized, oh, one, I'm getting gassed. Two, I'm not as quick as I thought I'd be. Comes back lighter the next year and comes back even lighter the year after that, plays between 272 and 262 the rest of his career. And of course, is the Hall of Famer who leads, official sack numbers. He's the official leader in sacks in the history of the game. Obviously, if you want to use the unofficial numbers from John Toney and the Professional Football Writers Professional Football Research Association, you get a different outcome. But amongst the official sack numbers, he's the leading sacker of all time. So that's always a question. Can this guy maintain it? When he goes home for the holidays and he's around his cousins and his mother and whatever, and they're having biscuits and gravy and smothered chicken and pork chops and all that stuff, like macaroni and cheese. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make everybody hungry, but it's when you're a big guy and you love to eat and you're on this, I'm having salmon, I'm having brown rice, and you're doing all that and you've gotten those great shape, and then you get a contract and you're playing well in your rookie season, then you go home for the holidays, right? And you put on 22 pounds over the holidays. I'm once again, this is not, I'm not throwing this out as a hypothetical. I've seen it happen. I've seen guys literally come back from the holidays 22 pounds heavier, which big guys can do. And now you're like, wait a second, what happened to 337 pounds? You're 359, right? That might not happen. He might have incredible discipline, but it's a bit of a risk. And I feel like Charles Cross, though he doesn't give you the sort of name recognition and the Alabama tax you have to pay because people fall in love with Alabama prospects, but he is a very complete pass blocker. Maybe the most complete. He's not the throw guys into the stands guy that Icky Ukwanema is, because Icky loves throwing dudes into the stands. He doesn't do that at that same level, and he's not the gigantic stomping on Tokyo Godzilla thing that Evan Neal can be. He's not, a real life giant. Well, I mean, he's a very large person, but he's a normal sized offensive tackle, which is still a freak show person. But look at his footwork. Look at how he uses his hands. He's at this point the cleanest of the three. Of the three we talked about, we love them all, but he's the cleanest technique wise of the three. If you want to throw a guy out day one and play him at left tackle and try to keep whichever young quarterback they're destroying the future of with the Jets at whatever particular time in their history, since you're doing it, I guess I get on the game, Brock, and just throw out shots.
Absolutely.
But I mean, look at their record of destroying young quarterbacks. I mean, it's not a record, but it's a heck of an average. But it might help you maybe not to destroy this one so quickly if they got him an elite left tackle. And I think that in terms of pass blocking, like I said, Cross wins.
Yes. So it's very funny because besides obviously the last pick, I think you and I, Bill, have been in disagreement the whole night.
Pretty much.
But that's all right because we finally found something we agree on. And yes, Charles Cross is my selection. I know somebody called the Pope. It's going down. Charles Cross, to me, for everything that you said, is the right pick at number 6. I would like to add that if I was the GM of the Carolina Panthers, this would have happened because I was going to select Justin Fields last season and then sign a left tackle. And then after the Darnold trade, I wanted Rashawn Slater for the Panthers. Thankfully, he dropped to my Chargers. So again, and also I would have selected Patrick Surtain over JC Horn. That's neither here nor there. I do just want to start on the Panthers organization real quick. Also, the fact that they have paid Cam Newton, the replacement for Cam Newton, and also the replacement for Cam Newton's replacement. So they have been a mess of a franchise. I think Charles Cross is the absolute centerpiece to what can be a revitalized offense, considering the fact that you already have 2 high-level receivers in Anderson and DJ Moore, alongside the fact that you don't have a left tackle, alongside this fact that Charles Cross in these past couple of seasons has been a left tackle in Mike Leach's famous I pass all the time air raid system. He is constantly in pass block against some of the best pass rushers in the nation at the collegiate level. I think that talent is going to translate to the NFL very well, alongside the fact that he is able to run block. Of course, not as effective as some other guys, but the fact that Mike Leach also runs a lot of pitches and things of that nature. So with that being said, Charles Cross, I like you at number 6 to the Carolina Panthers. Now we are moving on to number 7 of the New York Giants. All of us were in agreement. Ukwanu at 5, right? So we're all on the same page with that. Now at number 7, still a lot of holes to solve. I just want to add the fact that the Giants spent a lot of money last season on their defense and also Kenny Golladay. With that being said, I'll go first. And the person I have selected number 7 is the center out of Iowa, Tyler Linderbaum. Now, the reason why I select Tyler Linderbaum is he, to me, is the best interior lineman in the draft. Alongside the fact that he comes from a phenomenal football foundation at Iowa when it comes to linemen. Iowa has been producing linemen and tight end at a high level for Kirk Ferentz's entire tenure there. I also want to add the fact that what a center can do for a quarterback is what a good center can do for a quarterback is completely underappreciated. Of course, we talk about the left tackle when it comes to being the key piece of the offensive line. The center is the signal caller. And what I seen last season, Justin Herbert, because I watched Chargers a lot, Justin Herbert's game took another level when he had Corey Linsley as a center, because Corey Linsley took a lot of responsibility off his shoulders. Herbert could focus on a bunch of other things happening in his pre-snap reads, alongside the fact that when you saw the 1 or 2 games for which Lindsey wasn't on the field, Herbert's play wasn't necessarily bad, but it did suffer to an extent. When you have a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who is still trying to find himself in the league, a guy like Linderbaum could move that to the next level. If you don't want to put him at center yet, he's going to be a phenomenal guard in the meantime. And again, revitalize that rushing attack for the New York Giants. With that being said, Tyler, since they're your favorite team, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking at 7?
So I do like the Linderbaum pick by you, because I do believe in investing in the offensive line. And I probably would have gone with Linderbaum. However, with the inevitable trade of James Bradbury looming, I would pick Derek Stingley Jr. at 7, with Wink Martindale being the new defensive coordinator. Obviously, the talk is we need more corners. The Giants definitely do need a corner, especially with the departure of their number 1 corner. I believe, like everything Bill had mentioned before, Derek Stingley, before his Liz Frank injury, was an elite level athlete. But that being said, with the nagging injury, or just even if he's completely, healed from that injury, one thing with athletes is if there is an injury that can be re-aggravated by running a certain movement, it will always still be up here in their head. They just don't want to re-injure that. And it was shown throughout his play, there was no, flashy plays post his freshman season at LSU. I would say was disappointed for the standard that Derek Stingley Jr. was held at, but you can't deny his tools. I mean, he's got very good hips. I think he has elite foot speed, elite coverage skills. I mean, just based off those workout videos between him and Jamar Chase, I mean, you see him going one-on-one, they're fighting every rep. But I mean, he shows great technique. He squeezes when he needs to. He doesn't open the gates up right away. I mean, he understands the type of athlete he is. It's just getting him back up to speed to like, okay, like this is the player I once was, this injury, he just needs to get that out of his head. But other than that, I think, with his injury history, just hopefully it doesn't get re-aggravated, because then again, if he becomes an injury prone player, availability is the best ability. If you're not out there on the field, you're as good as nothing to the team, talent wise. What do you provide? But with that being said, I will pick Derek Stingley Jr. at 7.
Gotcha. All right. I'm going to throw it to you, Jackson. Who are you taking?
I'm going to go ahead and take Garrett Wilson, actually. It's pretty bad when your number one receiver doesn't have 1 touchdown on the year in Kenny Golladay. So I think after this season, maybe it'll be Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 1, KT number 2, and then Golladay number 3 is what we might be looking at.
That's very interesting that you say that, because not that selection. I do like the pick of Garrett Wilson. I do like the fact that you go with the receiver, considering the fact that Arthur Smith is an offensive-minded coach, and quite frankly, Matt Ryan's only offensive weapon last season was Cordell Patterson. Now you're going to have to go with Marcus Mariota, so you do need that kind of guy. It does bring up an interesting thing that Garrett Wilson is your first receiver off the board, and the fact that he is the first receiver any of us has said tonight. So we're going to explore that later. Just wanted to bring that up. All right, Bill, I'm going to throw it to you. Who are you taking?
Yeah, so for me, this is where Kyle Hamilton finds his landing spot. They have not had tremendous, impactful playmaking in the back half of their secondary since
I would say Antrell Roll.
right. You got to go back a ways.
Yes.
Right.
Kind of my point. Like, I don't know if Jackson was born the last time they had really an impactful playmaker back there. So yes, it's been a minute. They could use somebody that gives them scheme versatility. They could use somebody that will get them the ball back. Offensive-minded head coaches like to get the ball back. Sometimes people think offensive-minded head coaches only want to get offensive players. No, they understand that defensive players can create offensive opportunities. Oh, you can get the ball back for us? I'll take 4 or 5 extra possessions. Thank you, sir. So I think that it's also he's a tone setter also. This team is essentially rebooting their team's culture, right? Think of all the team leaders that they had a couple of years ago. None of them are left. Cue the Will Smith meme from the last episode of The Fresh Prince, where it's like, so yes, you're starting clean almost in terms of team culture. This is a guy that is a tone setter. He's going to help your team to realize who we are, what our personality is, off the charts character, terrific human being, incredible football acumen, tape student, all that stuff, right? He's going to become a team captain as a rookie. He's that kind of guy. So I think, and Arthur Blank really prizes character, especially after the adventure they had a few years back, Michael Vick, et cetera. So I think now they now really, especially for guys they see as team leaders, want guys that have, squeaky clean might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think Hamilton might squeak a little bit.
Yeah, that's a very, very fair pick. So I was debating on this for a while, because I agree in the fact that they should go defense, especially the fact that there's so much offensive talent in this draft, especially the wide receiver position, which again, we'll get to later. It was a debate for me for a while. I was going between Trent McDuffie and Trayvon Walker. Since the signing of Casey Hayward, I'm going Trayvon Walker. Quite frankly, I don't think the Falcons have had that great of a defensive pass rusher. Please correct me if I'm wrong, since probably Vic Beasley. during the Super Bowl run. They just signed Casey Hayward, like I said. AJ Terrell had a monster second season in the league. And they've just been kind of plugging people in, most recently Dante Fowler as the most notable name at the edge rusher position. You bring in a guy in from Georgia, right, into Atlanta, who, as far as I know, hasn't had any issues off the field in his entire career, was a dominant player on the field, will probably help revitalize Grady Jarrett coming forward, especially since maybe less attention might go on him, so on and so forth, unless news broke on Grady Jarrett that I'm not aware of. Anything that we know? No? Still good to go, right? All right. Perfect, because offseason is moving so fast, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think that the best, I agree with you guys, offense's best friend is a great defense. And to me, he is a best, what's the right term? At this point in my draft, he is the best available person to plug in that fits everything that they're going with, which is very interesting because he is my first edge rusher off the board. I completely went by Thibodeau, Carlatis, Hutchinson, so on and so forth. I just think Trayvon Walker may not be the best overall. I do think he is the best fit for Atlanta, though, moving forward. So that's why I selected him. Moving on to number 9, a team that wasn't supposed to have a first-round pick now does because they traded Russell Wilson. In that trade, Seattle, who is number 9, traded Russell Wilson. In exchange, they got Drew Lock, oh Lord. They also got Noah Fant and a multitude of picks, this being their highest one this season. So with that being said, I'm going to throw it back to you, Bill. Who should Seattle select with their number 9 overall pick?
So this, for me, is the landing spot for Evan Neal. You have a young quarterback, and he's a decent athlete. I mean, in fact, I'm underselling a little bit. He was a very good athlete. Remember, he was an AAU teammate of Michael Porter Jr., right? Played point guard with Michael Porter Jr. in AAU. And we all have enjoyed watching him, go off to young Jeezy. But for him to now flourish on a team that I don't think I'm telling anybody things they don't know, would have one of the worst offensive lines in recent memory the last couple of years, right up there with, I don't know, name a team with a terrible offensive line, right there with anybody in terms of just poor quality play. Evan Neal, one, is going to help you in the run game because they want to run the football. For those who've forgotten, that let Russ cook stuff is dead. One, because Russ is gone, right? And two, they have invested heavily in the running back position. They've taken running backs high. Now, obviously, Carson was a 7th rounder, but Penny was not, right? And when other people said give up, cut bait on Penny, they doubled down on Rashad Penny. They clearly believe in Rashad Penny. No one else might believe in Rashad Penny, but the Seahawks clearly believe in Rashad Penny. So they want to run the football, and it'll help Drew Lock. Absolutely. He's the kind of guy that needs a strong running game. So they're going to get a absolute run blocking monster in Evan Neal and drop him over there. And they'll probably find a quality guard somewhere in this draft as well, because there's plenty of those to be had. And they're going to pound the rock. They're going to get back to that whole, we threw the ball when we should give it to beast mode thing. Never again. We're going to pound it.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I throw it to you, Jackson, I just want to bring up the fact that Dwayne Brown is like 37 at this point in his career. Mm-hmm. And Pete Carroll obviously ain't changing philosophy at the age of, 70 now? If you think about his USC days, yes, he did have Heisman winners at the quarterback position, but the true essence of his game came from the 1-2 punch of Reggie Bush and LenDale White. And then you look at his early years in Seattle, if it wasn't for Marshawn Lynch, that offense wasn't going anywhere. And you look at the fact that at the receiver position, they got lucky when getting DK Metcalf, who was the last pick of the 2nd round. I believe Tyler Lockett, who was a 4th round pick. So that's just something to think about when they want to build their run game. I'll throw it to you, Jackson. At Seattle.
Doug Baldwin was an undrafted free agent.
There you go. And I believe Jermaine Kearse was around there too. Jackson.
For Seattle, I've actually got Malik Willis going at 9. Malik, is my highest quarterback just because I think the ceiling is the highest on here. He's definitely not the most pro ready. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a top 32 NFL quarterback come August. I think he's got the highest ceiling and the most to work with as far as tools in the toolbox. Think about it. Pete Carroll's always wanted to be a run first team and have that run first identity. Malik allows that. Man, if he came out as a running back, he'd be a draftable running back right now with, I believe, 86 broken tackles in his career. So I've got Malik going there. I think it'd be a perfect fit. All due respect to Drew Lock. He's a really good Band-Aid on this issue, but they need a guy who's going to be a franchise quarterback in the future.
Gotcha. And Jackson, I know you do have to leave shortly. So before we let you go, would you like to give us a quick rundown of your top 5 quarterbacks, since you did mention Malik Willis being number 1 off the board in your mock draft?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll go ahead. I just explained myself a little bit on Malik Willis on there. And I love his Lamar-like ability to run the ball, but you also have to cover every blade of grass, unlike against Lamar when he's throwing the ball too, because he can throw those deep and outside the numbers. I've got Kenny Pickett a second. His main knock, not his hand size, but that he runs from pressure a little bit too easily, depends on his legs too much. Otherwise, I think he's the most NFL-ready quarterback. Third, I've got Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. Just a winner, a culture changer, a guy who can clearly elevate a program. If you're worried about, you're not going to worry about intangibles with Desmond. He's consistently improved on his film year after year. And he reminds me a little bit of Justin Herbert in that he doesn't really want to run, but when he does, he's really good at it. I've got Sam Howell at number 4. I actually have Sam Howell in my mock draft going a little bit earlier to Tennessee because all his problems are the opposite of Ryan Tannehill's. He is a deep ball thrower. And if you look at translation, you look at your freshman year in college a lot of times, man, he's going to translate, I think, pretty quickly, possibly, considering how successful he was right off the bat at UNC. So great downfield passer. And yes, it certainly helped that he had Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, and Ty Chandler over the past few years. But if you can get him a good run game, then he's a good deep threat. And then I've got Matt Corral, 5-time NFL Executive of the Year. Scott Pioli always said that you can have the play action come off of your run game. You do have to have a passing game that's not dependent on your run game, though. It can't be all play action. Matt Corral. He had about 60% of his dropbacks coming off of play action, which is just kind of concerning for me. That's too high of a percentage. As far as under pressure, I take PFF grades with a grain of salt, but he had a 38% grade against pressure, which is a bad failing grade. So hopefully we see all these guys get a shot, right? Because, quarterbacks are a crapshoot maybe more than any other position in the draft. But that's my top 5 at least.
Gotcha. And real quick, Jackson, 2 more things before I let you go. You did mention that you had somehow go to Tennessee. Was that going to be your first rounder, or was that later, a little bit later in the draft?
I had it on my mock, at least in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened in the second or third, honestly. But I just kind of like that fit because maybe Tennessee says, hey, I'm not going to get burned by a guy who only works off of play action and can't throw the deep ball as well, right? Because Sam Howell's kind of the opposite of that. So I don't know. I just kind of like the fit there because I don't think Ryan Tannehill in that conference, in the AFC right now, is not going to be the solution.
Yeah, especially after that playoff disaster against Cincinnati.
Yeah. It's hard to have the 1 seed and then lose in that fashion, for sure.
All right, before you go, you want to say anything else?
Man, that's it for me. I'll just say just a couple sleepers that I'd love to point out. Alvin De La Rosa, maybe he's not going to get drafted, but look for him maybe on some of those UDFA trackers on your favorite team. Man, he's a safety from Fayetteville State. I got the chance to interview him. Incredibly bright kid from the HBCUs and film junkie. Can contribute on all 6 phases of special teams. He's a stud. And then Chad Muma, the linebacker from Wyoming.
Is he really a sleeper?
Chad?
Yeah.
I think so. I like
he's
him.
Top 50.
He's top 50. I don't know. I like him even maybe late day 1, just with how explosive he has a come. If you look at his explosion number, I got
Oh.
this from Pat Kerr.
I'm familiar with the explosion number. I love it.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it's a really useful tool. Man, he had a 77. That's higher than Aaron Donald, and only Demario Davis of the top 10 linebackers from this year had a higher number than Chad. So I like him, maybe even late in the first.
Wow. That I know we're gonna bring his name up. Man, I gotta watch more Wyoming film. Jeez.
Yeah. The only real all 22 I could find off of him was against like Boise State in the snow. So I'm not gonna pretend like I've gotten to spend a ton of time watching Chad. But what I did watch was great, and then obviously just an amazing combine that kind of put me on that. Hey, maybe someone does take a chance on him. I think Jason Light taught us a little bit with how well he's drafted linebackers, and that be willing to take non-premium positions at premium picks. So just saying, maybe someone takes a chance.
Absolutely. Well, Jackson, thank you so much for joining us. We're hoping to see you again on a post-draft show. Until then, we'll catch you next time.
I sure appreciate it, Brock. Thanks so much.
All right. So Seattle, Tyler, I'm gonna throw it to you. If you're Seattle at number 9, who are you taking?
So I'm going offensive tackle here, just a different offensive tackle, Charles Cross, because Evan Neal fell off or already was taken on my board. But like Charles Cross, I do believe fundamentally he is, a little more advanced in this class. Athletically, I think he falls somewhere in between Evan Neal and Ikem Ekwonu. But I mean, I think this is a good situation for him. Like you said, Dwayne Brown, who was once a very good tackle in the NFL, is aging. And just remember, like when they had Russell Wilson, their biggest problem was protecting their elite level quarterback. And now Drew Lock, is he the franchise quarterback or is he not? That's the biggest question. But if he is going to be your franchise quarterback, you're going to start with protecting him. If he's not, you're going to start by protecting your future franchise quarterback. And that's why you invest in a future right tackle in Charles Cross.
All right. That's a very interesting pick. I'm going to go in a complete opposite direction with you guys. I'm going to go on defense, and I'm going with Trent McDuffie, the cornerback out of Washington. A lot of things I like about his game. He is used to playing the Pacific Northwest, alongside the fact he can play both corner and safety, or more importantly, free safety, especially when I don't know how ready Quandre Diggs is going to become the regular season since he's coming off his injury. And Jamal Adams is kind of like in this weird position. Yes, he's a safety, but he can play close to the line. And whenever you have a player like that, you're going to need to have coverage going deep. I think McDuffie is able to fill in any role and really allow Jamal Adams to expand on his game and be more of a linebacker than a strong safety. So therefore, I am going with Mr. McDuffie. Moving on, we are going to the 10th overall pick, back to the New York Jets. Second team that is taking their second first round pick. With that being said, I'm gonna throw it right back to you, Tyler. Who do you see the Jets taking at number 10?
So for the Jets, I'm gonna go with Tyler Linderbaum at 10 for the Jets. I think he is the consensus number 1 center in the draft. I think that'll complete the offensive line for the New York Jets. I mean, protect your young quarterback. I think Tyler Linderbaum is a surefire starter. I think he has a high floor. Question his ceiling, but I do like the aggression that he plays with. He's a little bit shorter, lacks the levers that you would like in a lineman, but however, I think he moves well. I think he can read. I think he could call out blocking schemes from the line of scrimmage. He's a very intelligent player. Just really like what he brings to the field. Like I've said before, it starts with protecting the quarterback, and they already have drafted offensive linemen high in the past 2 drafts. So I'm going to go with Tyler Linderbaum at 10.
It's a very interesting pick. I just want to expound on that last point with the fact that those picks were Mekhi Becton and also Vera Tucker. They also spent a fair amount of money on Morgan Moses last season. So the Jets to your point, have made a considerable effort to protect Zach Wilson. All right, Bill, I'm going to throw it to you. At number 10 with the Jets, who are you taking?
Trayvon Walker. And I know people are super, super high on him. And there's a lot there to work with. And I know he kind of looks a bit like Michael Strahan, but he actually is closer to Justin Tuck, though he, obviously a better athlete than Tuck. But he's a guy that I think is best as a move around guy, a guy that, as they say, plays the piano, right? Do, like here. Kick him into 3 tech at times, 4 at times, 5, and even in your like NASCAR dragster, what do you want to call it? Package, your Formula One, whatever, everybody has some sort of package that they describe this way. We have 4, sometimes even 5 rushers with their hands in the dirt. Then you bring him down and you let him, just destroy the life of some poor guard who has no chance of blocking a guy as athletic as he is. And you kick him outside and let him rush outside, let him destroy tight ends for a living at times. You can stand him up, you can drop him. If you look at what they want to do defensively and the defense that, or similar, to what the defense that they ran with the 49ers, you can see players that were used that way in the past. And I think he becomes that guy who plays some Leo, plays some 4-eye, plays some 5, I think he plays all over the place. And I think that helps them. First of all, they can use everything. As was pointed out before, their team is really bad. And the one advantage of being a really terrible football team is you can use everything, right? There is literally no position you can pick where you can say, oh, they can't use that. But I think that this is probably their last chance to get an elite level pass rusher in this class. And I think they don't want to pass up on it.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you, especially when you consider all the guys that are already off your board going into this, going to the 10th pick, alongside the fact that, as I previously mentioned, the Jets have, I believe, let's take a look, the 36th and 38th overall pick. So that's 2 high second-round picks in an offensively dominated draft when it comes to talent. So here's where I kind of stand on the Jets. Obviously, they're in win-now mode because of Zach Wilson's rookie contract. They also have to consider what are they going to do with Quinnen Williams' contract coming up. He and Nick Bosa are obviously going to be the guys that are going to reset the pass rushing market. And if you're going to spend that kind of money on Quinnen Williams, you're going to need a guy that's going to be able to cause some pressure, cause some damage, on the opposite side of him. And right now, his brother is there, but that's not the guy, in my opinion. There's a lot of great pass rushers in this class, and you're going to be very surprised at the pass rusher I say, because it's not Hutchinson, and it's not Thibodeau, and I will go with my concerns with them later. It's going to be George Karlaftis at number 10 coming out of Purdue. I just really love his game. I love how he comes off the outside. He's very, very explosive. Thank you, Bill, for agreeing with me for the 2nd time tonight. So we're getting up there, or the 3rd, actually. So very, very nice. When you look at a guy like him and where he has to play up in New York, he's going to be playing outside. He's going to be playing in the elements. Not a lot of places get cold like Purdue come wintertime. So I already know he's going to be able to survive in the elements. I already know that he has the skills to be a top pass rusher in this league. Compared with a guy like Quinnen Williams, I think that's just going to ignite that Jets offense. And when you look at the prototype of the Jets defense, when you look at the prototype of the Jets defense, it's the Niners defense. And the Niners defense is completely predicated on having a dominant outside pass rusher. Yes, it did help. They had DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead and all those guys. To me, you have a guy like that with Quinnen Williams. You don't quite have that guy yet on the outside. Karlaftis can be that dude. I'm not saying he's going to be Nick Bosa. Didn't beat to that level. And with the fact that with my 4th overall pick, which was Sauce Gardner, that is just going to be a unstoppable. Well, that is taking a big step in being an unstoppable defense. That's what I'm going to say. So therefore, George Karlaftis. Moving on to number 11, the Washington Commanders. They have made some very interesting moves this offseason, most notably trading to go get Carson Wentz, and they didn't have to give up a first rounder to go get him. We can talk about that Wentz trade later, but they have a lot of pieces on offense. Of course, Wentz, which is here and there, but they also just were able to re-sign J.D. McKissick. They still have Antonio Gibson. They also got Cosme last year out of Texas at tackle, and they have Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas when it comes to their tight ends and receivers, alongside a very young nucleus of receivers. I believe Humphreys is still on the team, and he had a very impressive 2021. And De'Ami Brown, who I was a big fan of coming out of North Carolina. When it comes to the defensive side, to me, they have a top 5 defensive line in the NFL, if not top 3 when fully healthy. I mean, you got guys like Payne and Allen and the other Allen, Chase Allen, and Jonathan Allen. You also have Matt Ioannidis. To me, the next step in improving that defense is linebacker. And therefore, I am going with Devin Lloyd out of Utah at number 11. So with that being said, I'm going to throw it to you, Bill, who are you taking at 11 to Washington? Oh, we can't hear you. There we go.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. So first of all, like I said, you don't lack for courage. I love it. You're just out there swinging. I think they'll certainly consider guys like Lloyd, and I think they'll, look at, as we said, I think they were sort of hoping against hope that one of the, the top level, premium level pass rushers would make it to them. Not that they lack for that, but like you never have too many. There's certain positions where you can never have too many of them. Like no team's ever said, "Oh, we have too many good pass rushers." You'll never hear that as long as you live. But the player I actually think that they ends up there is Drake London. They have a really interesting group of receivers, but I think the tallest of them is 6'1" and an 1/8. And so now they have an opportunity to get a dominant, big-bodied, but quicker than people give him credit for being. I think people look at him and they don't realize how good an athlete he is. I mean, I've seen him do 540 dunks in games. Like, I'm not talking about like slam dunk competition. I mean, in games of 540. I mean, this guy's a really good athlete. Played 2 sports at USC. Absolutely dominated in the passing attack there. I mean, I don't know how much people care about like market share percentage or dominator rating, whatever it is, but he's off the charts. When Keaton Slovis was in trouble, which was often, he threw the ball covered, open, didn't matter where. Drake London. And my notes on Drake London, when I first started breaking him down back during his sophomore year, was Mike Evans at 33 1/3. Now, for those of you too young to have ever owned records, a full speed speed is 45 RPMs, because that's what a record full speed spins on. But a 33 1/3 record, an LP long playing, right, plays at 33 1/3. So it's a little bit slower, but it's still effective, still gets the job done. I think that you're getting a slightly slower version of Mike Evans, and I think that's still a pretty darn good football player. And he's different from all the other receivers they have. He's different from Scary Terry. He's different from De'Ami Brown. He's different from Adam Humphrey. I mean, all those guys win a certain way, and almost all of them win with quickness and route running. And London's a better route runner than people give credit for, but he mostly wins with a combination of vertical ability, positioning, long arms, big hands. And look at what he does after the catch. Look at how many tackles he breaks. Look at times where he's carried 2 or 3 players into the end zone with him. He's an absolute animal and super competitive, and he gets mad when people tackle him, like literally angry when he gets tackled. They don't have anybody like that. They don't have anybody like that on their team right now. He's, we used the term tone setter before. He's going to immediately go into that wide receiver room, and everybody's going to, play a little harder because, wow, this new kid's really good, and I want to make sure that I keep getting paid. And he's, once again, a guy that he's not just a jump ball guy. He's not just a red zone guy, but he is able to be a jump ball guy and a red zone guy. And he had nobody like that on the roster.
Yeah, I like Drake London a lot. And I'm very interested that you brought up Drake London, because he is the first receiver off your board, if I'm correct, right? So correct. Drake London is number 1, whereas Garrett Wilson was the first one on Jackson. So that's going to be something to talk about later. I just want to add along to that fact that when you look at the receiver room, like you were saying, a bunch of guys that use speed, quickness to win matchups. To me, to your point, Drake London is the best jump ball receiver in this draft, without a doubt in my mind. And the fact that so much attention must be shown on other players, Drake London should have those one-on-one matchups needed to utilize that strength. And we've seen that already happen with Michael Pittman last year when it comes to Carson Wentz and the Colts. Love that pick a lot. Tyler, going with you, who are you taking if you're Washington?
So I'm going to go with the same player, Drake London. And Now, he's the first receiver off my board as well, but I did not have him as my number one receiver overall.
And neither do I, but
Right.
the fit is,
Yes, and
Yeah,
actually,
like they don't need an Olave or a Wilson. They need somebody that can.
they have those guys actually.
Exactly. They got a go getter.
right. And to that point, actually a scout that I work with, I mean, he said it to me first, where if you're gonna bring in a guy to an already crowded room, this guy needs to be able to change that room, bring an element that we don't have. Now, Drake London, 6'4", I mean, he is a contested catch monster. I love how he plays with an aggression that you don't see in too many receivers these days. Great, has a huge catch radius. I mean, I think his elite traits come from his height and his catch radius. Now, he has good hands. I think he's an above average route runner, but you can't really expect too much on the route running aspect from a taller receiver. Now, you want an elite level route runner, you have that from Terry McLaurin. You can get that from Curtis Samuel. But with Drake London, this is a threat in the high red. He can move the chains on third down, one-on-one coverage. I mean, you do not want to be a corner playing press man against Drake London. And now this makes an already good receiver room. They make that Drake London would make that room scary. Now, I know there's a lot of hate towards Carson Wentz, but if you give Carson Wentz some weapons, I mean, the things I've seen him do in that 2017 season where they made a run at the Super Bowl, I know Carson Wentz is a good natural passer. It's just all up here. But if you give him weapons, that Washington Commanders team will be scary if you add Drake London to that receiver room.
Yes. And I have to absolutely agree with you. And as we all know, Carson Wentz is a gambler. He would throw a 50-50 ball anytime, any place, doesn't matter. I mean, he threw it to triple coverage against Tennessee in overtime. Not the point. Point is, Drake London is the type of guy that can make those type of plays, as we mentioned. I also want to bring up the fact that throughout this podcast, I've talked about the receiver room being very deep this draft. However, like you both are saying, that you need a guy that can change the dynamic of that receiver room. There is no other guy like Drake London in the rest of this receiver class, at least not that I can see at this moment. So therefore, I love that pick. I'm gonna stick with mine because I gotta be me, I gotta be different. But I absolutely love that pick from both of you. Moving on to number 12, the Minnesota Vikings, new GM, new head coach. Something that hasn't happened for them in a very long time, especially GM Spillman has been there since the early 2000s. I'll go first because this is a name that you guys said early and I've been letting drop, which is Aiden Hutchinson. I think he would be the perfect fit for Minnesota, especially when you consider the fact that we don't know where Daniel Hunter is right now in terms of his health. However, if he does come back, having a guy like Hutchinson on the opposite side will take that already impressive Minnesota defense to the next level, considering the fact that they also have to get rid of some of their players due to cap concerns. I know, Bill, we'll get to that in a second. But it's because to get rid of some of the defensive players due to cap concerns, especially since they loaded up on contracts on the defensive side of the ball. Here's the thing. I like a lot of things about Hutchinson. He's got a great swim move. I love the way he closes angles. He's long. He has a really decent rip move. It's hard for me because I look at some of his highlights and the quarterback is in the pocket 3, 4, 5 seconds before he even gets to the backfield. And especially when you had a guy like Ojabo on the other side of him. The plus side I want to stick to that is Hutchinson does have a lot of upside. And the fact that, for sure, Minnesota will have to play on the road in Detroit, but more importantly, Green Bay and Chicago. And when it gets cold, you need a guy that can rise up in the cold. And he played his best ball when it got cold at Michigan outside the big house. So for those reasons, I will be going with Aiden Hutchinson. Now, I know Bill gave me a little bit of an arrow. Let's see what you got to say, Bill. And if you're Minnesota, who you take at number 12?
I mean, obviously, if you get a chance to take somebody who's that good at 12, I mean, you knock over your grandmother to get Aiden Hutchinson at that point in the draft. So yes, I mean, that's an obvious pick. I think he might slide a little bit, but I just can't think of him getting, I don't know how there's teams I don't think would let him get all the way to 12. That's all I'd say. And I think there's teams that would like him enough that if somebody made it past 5 or 6, they'd trade up to get it. That's the only thing I would say about that. I don't think there's a scenario where he actually could make it all the way to 12. But yes, obviously they would take him if he somehow made it to them. This is where I found a home for Devin Lloyd. They at one point had a great linebacking core, and once again, they're all gone. For those who haven't been following the Vikings, they no longer have one of the more talented wide receiver groups. Linebacker groups. They used to. They used to have an athletic, fun to watch linebacker group. It's like, hey, Audie Cole sometimes would get in the mix, but they had Kendricks and Barr, and they had a lot of good stuff going on. And then now, not so much. And especially the modern linebacker, the coverage linebacker, they haven't had one of those since Kendricks. So they've got some stuff to do. And Dean gives you that guy with the dot on the helmet, right? So he's a signal caller. He's a guy that's used to running, basically helping to run the defense together with the coordinator. He can run and hit. He can cover. He can blitz. Only thing I would say, he's not awesome at stack and shed, but then who is nowadays? It's almost a lost art. But there's guys who are worse at it, right? I mean, somebody took the Kobe Dean super early, and he gets bounced around like a pinball in the interior in the run game. So
don't believe me, just watched it because of
but luckily the run game is less important than it used to be. So guys who can't really handle pulling guards can now survive in the league when they used to not be able to. So, he'll probably be okay. But Dean handles it okay, but he's not great at it. He's not, stoning guys and tossing them to the side. That's there's only a handful of linebackers left who do that in college football. But he's a great space linebacker who has a high football IQ, who's athletic, So, yeah, I think it's a good fit. And once again, they're another team that's sort of rebooting. I mean, a lot of the guys who were leaders on that defense are either gone or will be gone. They have a lot of guys who have either are complete, these guys know they're gone. Like, it's not like it's a secret. The guys who aren't gone know that they're gone soon, and they're not done cutting people. For those who are wondering, they're watch. There'll be another round of cuts, and they're going to get rid of some more people, and they're going to pick up, some low price free agents and obviously guys they're going to draft. But that team, it's going to look very different in a couple of years.
Yes, absolutely. I remember Bill earlier talking about how I was shooting strays at people. That was a targeted attack on my second overall pick. Oh, I felt it in my heart. The Kobe, if you're listening, please prove me wrong.
I've been a Kobe Dean fan. I want to get that on the record. I really like it, but wow, 2 overall.
Yeah. I guess I just want to defend my pick real quick. I don't think I think the Kobe Dean is a perfect fit for the Lions, and I don't think he's going to be there at 32. So I'll make sure I want to get him early. However, the Lions traded that. What's up?
I got what you're saying. I still think that if they really loved him, they would trade back from 2, pick up more picks, because they're not 1 or 2 players away. I think everybody knows that. If you're the Lions and there's some team that might be in love with Sauce, or might be in love with Thibodeau, or might be in love with Hutchinson, whatever it is, you make that deal and you pick up another first rounder, right? And maybe a second and a third next year. Now you're doing something. But yeah. I mean, I'm having fun with you, but I'm a big Nakobe Dean guy too. I really like the kid. I just, just 2. It's just a 2 overall thing that makes me a little wobbly kneed, but I do like the player.
Fair enough. And I just want to add to Aiden Hutchinson before I get to you, Tyler. I just want to add about the Aiden Hutchinson. That's why I think he'll be a good fit. Do I think he's going to drop that low? I don't think he's dropping at all. I think Jacksonville is set on taking on number 1 unless they trade out of number 1, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon. I just think when it comes to fit, Hutchinson does not fit in Jacksonville. Or maybe I'm just getting PTSD highlights from the Orange Bowl when that dude looked like he was dying by 2nd quarter. I don't know. But there's so many question marks in my opinion on Aiden Hutchinson that I just don't know how to feel. I'm gonna throw it to you.
He's a very good football player. He wins with effort. And you're right. He doesn't have an elite trait other than giving it all. I mean, that's kind of his elite trait, hustle. His elite trait is hustle, right? It's like John Havlicek. It's like there's certain guys where he was like, how is this guy this good? He's not that. He shouldn't be this good, right? There's certain players you look at them like, right? The components don't equal the whole. How is he doing this? And he's going to get 7.5 8.5, 9. He'll never be like a huge sack guy, but he'll get 7.5, 8.5, 9. And several of them will be like guys he slid off the first time he chased them down again, right? Those kind of sacks. Those I never say die sacks. And some people like take off points for that. I've never gotten that. Well, it's not a high quality sack. Are you kidding me? He chased that guy for 4 seconds. What's more high quality than that? I know people like the first move, boom, boom, boom sack. Like that's because it means that the ball couldn't get out faster. I get all that. But I don't knock a guy for getting effort sacks. I didn't take Kyle Vanden Bosch's sacks all counted. And probably 60% of them were like, chase the guy around until he forgets you're chasing him and then get him from behind. I mean, like he would get sacks that a normal person would have given up on. He just would refuse to give up. There's nothing wrong with being an effort guy. And that's what he is.
I completely agree with you. First of all, I want to make my point very clear. There's no such thing as a bad sack.
Thank you.
Yeah, like no. All right, especially even if you don't sack him, just be able to disrupt a quarterback is good enough. I guess my worry with Hutchinson is that he doesn't have, in my opinion, he doesn't have that ability to get through to a quarterback in those 1-2 moves. And as shown in the Orange Bowl, he can be easily schemed out of any defensive play or philosophy or anything like that. So that's kind of where my concern comes in for that.
Well, I don't think we disagree. I just think that he'll find a way to get it done, right? He's one of those guys that will just find a way. He'll never be, like I said, those like 13, 14, 15, like 17, those TJ Watt numbers, that's not in the cards for him. Those Chandler Jones numbers, that's not in the cards for him. He doesn't have that kind of physical talent. But he's a really hard worker. He's a terrific human being. And my God, is he going to work at his craft? Like he's going to work at his craft. And he's going to have a really solid career.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Honestly, I see him having a Chris Long type of career. Somebody that had some really nice moments when he was in St. Louis for the long time he was there. Goes to a place like New England, like Philadelphia, who had great players around him, who had great defensive philosophy, and explode on that. I know we've been kind of isolating you out, Tyler. So, Tyler, who are you taking number 12 overall from Minnesota?
So for number 12 overall to Minnesota, I'm going with Trayvon Walker. And now Trayvon, I believe he will add a different dynamic to that, to the pass rush in Minnesota. I was going to go corner here. However, Minnesota did re-sign Patrick Peterson. He's not the player that he once was, but there's not an immediate need for corner for me over there. But Trayvon Walker, he's an intriguing prospect to me because, I mean, the testing numbers that he put up for his position, I mean, those are elite numbers. And like Bill had said, there is versatility when it comes to Trayvon Walker. Do you play this guy at the 3 technique? Do you play him at the 4 eye? Can you play him at 5? Or you can play him as a stand-up edge rusher. I mean, I think with the state of the Minnesota Vikings defensive line, I mean, you can play this guy anywhere. And I think he'll provide value wherever he is. I mean, he just adds a different dynamic to that defensive line. So I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker over there.
That's fair. And honestly, I don't think with any of the picks we said, the Vikings would go wrong at all, as long as they go defense, especially the fact that they have so much draft capital, but also money invested on the offensive side of the ball, with mostly Kirk Cousins. Not the point, even though I'm not a big fan of Mr. Kirk. I think they need to shut up the defense, because if you need Cousins to win a shootout, he's not going to. That's just not the way he operates. And if Dalvin Cook or Madison or anybody isn't able to get a run game established, it's going to be a long day in the office if you're a Minnesota fan. With that being said, let's move on to a team that has, once again, this is their second first-round pick of this draft. At number 13, it is the Houston Texans with a pick from the Cleveland Browns. So with that being said, I'll go first, and I will name my first wide receiver off the board, and Garrett Wilson. So I want to make myself clear on Garrett Wilson. He's not my number 1 receiver overall. I'll get to that later. However, I think he's the right fit for a place like Houston. A guy like Davis Mills, I wasn't really high on him coming into the draft last season, but he got put in a really horrible situation and kind of exploded onto the scene. I mean, yes, he did have some really bad games when he first got in, but come later on the season, he was throwing dimes, having 250, 300-yard performances. And considering the fact that his top receiver is Brandon Cooks, I just think that this is going to be a very interesting offense for Houston, considering the fact that Cooks is still on the roster. Brevin Jordan, I think, is going to take a huge step up next season. This guy had a lot. I was really high on coming to the draft last year. And I just think he needs that number 2 weapon to really take his game to the next level. I really like a lot of things like Garrett Wilson. He's able to run the route tree. He's able to do almost anything you need when it comes to the receiver position. He can run the bubble screen. He can block on the screen. He can run he can even be put in the backfield and make some plays out there. Not a utility man like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I feel like that. But what I'm saying is you can line him and you can move him out of the backfield and he can burn any defender at any time. So with that being said, I'm taking Garrett Wilson if I'm Houston with number 13. I'm going to throw it to you, Tyler. What do you think?
So I'm actually going to agree with you and go with Garrett Wilson as well. Now, the thing that we talked about with the Washington Commanders earlier is that they were lacking a big receiver. The thing with the Texans receiver room is they have 2 receivers that are over 6'3". One is Chris Conley, who also provides very good speed on the outside. And then you have, what's his name? Nico Collins, who is 6'4" as well. But Garrett Wilson, I believe, his elite trait is creating separation. I think he's a very good route runner. The initial burst that he gets off the line of scrimmage is very good, nearing elite. I think he has good hands. Like I said, very good route runner. And I think my favorite elite trait is he's a high effort player. He adds a different dynamic to that receiver room. Gives you another target for Davis Mills. My problem with that receiver room is they're lacking a true wide receiver 1. And I think Brandon Cooks, who is in that receiver room, could be that for that receiver room. However, he just can't stay healthy. So with that being said, I'm going to put Garrett Wilson at 13.
All right. So we're on the same page with that, Tyler. I'm going to throw it to you, Bill. Who are you taking number 13 with Houston's second overall pick? Or not overall, but second first rounder.
I know what you meant. Their second first round pick. So I agree that the pick is going to be an offensive pick. And and they could use excuse me. And once again, we talked about this, the advantage of being a terrible team. They can use everything. With the exception of quarterback, they are not really set at any other position anywhere on their offense. Just for fun, right? Here's some names from Blast from the Past or Blast from the whatever. Hey, remember Rex Burkhead? Guess what? He's still in the league, kids. And he's playing for your hometown Houston Texans. They got Royce Freeman too. Remember when he was backing up Lindsey out in Denver? Well, now he's in the mix, I guess, for the running back position for the Texans. Here's some other fun names. Remember Deshaun Hamilton? Draft Twitter loved him. The NFL was like, but Draft Twitter loved him. Let's see. And here, let's talk a little about Andy Janovich. That's right. Fullbacks are fun. And then let's dig into some of that exciting offensive line action they've got going on. Charlie Heck, he's not awful. He's a professional offensive lineman. Hey, Carson Green, he's a backup offensive lineman, but he's not awful. Gosh, what else is exciting going on with that offense? Let's see. If you're a big fan of guard play, they got AJ Cann. He's in the mix for that offensive line group. Tight end Pharaoh Brown is almost a tackle. He's a very, very large man. Let's see. Other exciting things on that. Dave Anthony Auclair, another tight end, and I think Canadian, if memory serves it correctly. Let's see. What else fun and exciting things they have on their offensive talent group? They do have an interesting young tight end in Brevan Jordan. He has a chance to be something. So that's somebody I was watching. We talked about Mills before. Justin McCray, right? Another guy's in the mix for one of the guard spots. He's a football player. Jimmy Morrissey, That's right. He's in the fight for the center position. You know, that's always. Here's somebody to actually remember. Cedric Abui. Remember him? Yeah, they got him. He's a tackle. Scott Quisenberry. Another
Hey,
guy.
Chargers!
Yes, right. Another guy in that guard center mix.
Yeah, he's more of a backup for anywhere on the interior line.
Sure, he can back up anywhere. Max Sharping. He's got something to him. Maybe he'll become something. We'll see. Jordan Steckler, right? They love Northern Iowa players, right? They got two teammates from Northern Iowa, Steckler and Sharping. Yeah, it's good to see that. Didn't want to break up the set, I guess. They got Cole Toner, right? Harvard, man. Cole Toner. So I don't know what you've noticed, sort of a trim of their offensive line. And I've almost forgot Marcus Cannon. There we go. And Jake Elderkamp to complete the set. So I don't know if you've noticed something. Every one of their offensive linemen are guys that on a good offensive line would either be backups or at least in a fight to hold on to their spot. What can help you when your offensive line is somewhere between below average and So one of the things that can help you is you talk about things like leadership, tone setter, et cetera. This is where I'm sending Tyler Linderbaum. As everyone knows, if they're paying attention at all, he is a guy that managed to defeat the almost undefeatable Tristan Wirfs in wrestling in high school in the state of Iowa. Terrific shot putter, terrific discus guy, explosive, athletic, smart. Character is literally spotless. The kind of guy that, once again, walks in the camp and immediately even veterans are like, oh, okay. Start listening when that guy speaks. Like he has a great grasp of the game. Got coached by the Ferences, right? Father and son team there, and one of those guys are great at. Well, they're great, obviously, at offensive line, but particularly at centers and guards. I mean, look at how many terrific centers and guards. I mean, I know you don't scout helmets, but they really, and tight ends, they do a good job of tight ends there too, but they really understand the interior of the offensive line. And I think that, some people have him off the board earlier. I think this is really sort of the sweet spot for him where his value and what he brings to the team all kind of makes sense. And there are teams that even as much as they love him will still feel like they should wait on a center. Center is a position some teams don't super value, but leadership really matters on a team that has had some leadership. I think it'd be fair to say issues in the past. I think that'd be a good to describe some things that happened in Houston. And Davis Mills is a young quarterback who I think would really benefit from having a super smart center. No offense to the centers they have on the roster, but I think you're going to get more out of him immediately than they've gotten from the other centers. And I think he takes over the job. I mean, no offense once again to the centers. I don't think any of those guys are going to hold off Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because if you didn't say Linderbaum initially, you were setting it up perfectly for Trevor Penning with the two Northern Iowa guys. But I completely agree with that assessment, especially since Houston is an organization that's in a weird spot when it comes to drafting due to their great friend, well, one right now, but also Jack Esterby, Mr. Character Coach himself. So when you talk about boxes being checked, Linderbaum checks all of them, and that is it, which is interesting because Linderbaum, like I said, has been high as I put him at 7. But I've seen people say that he's going to drop to even where the Cowboys are, right, in those like early to mid-20s. I don't think that's going to happen personally, but you never know. So I agree with you that you found the sweet spot. Love the pick, but I hope what's the right term? I hope Wilson is right because I have Linderbaum and Wilson off the board. Tyler, I don't think you've mentioned Linderbaum yet, so it's going to be kind of interesting where you place him because you're kind of like the last on the board, unless he's going to be your next pick. Here we go. I'm just going to throw it up there.
Jets earlier.
What's up?
I had him going to the Jets earlier.
Oh, at
He's off the board right now. So
at 10?
Yeah.
Oh, disregard that. Well, so we all kind of have a really high grade on him, which is going to be interesting to see if he's able to pull it off. But there's no doubt in my mind with everything you guys both said that he'll be able to, especially with that foundation he comes from. And also the fact, let's be real now, their entire offense was just giving the ball to Goodson. So maybe I'm just a Steven Petras hater. That might not factor into my decision-making at all. Moving on to number 14, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Ravens are in this very peculiar position because realistically, they shouldn't be drafting this high. And it's not like they had a bad season. They had a decent season, went down to Miami. That happened. And then Lamar got hurt, and they just lost ever since. So they have a very good roster. They have been able to dominate and make the playoffs in each of Lamar's past 3 seasons. This past season being the only one that haven't made the playoffs. A lot of interesting ways we can go there. I'm gonna throw it to you, Tyler, first. If you're Baltimore's GM, where are you going?
So this is going to be kind of an interesting pick, but for the Baltimore Ravens, I'm actually going to go with cornerback Andrew Booth from Clemson. Now, Baltimore already has 2 good corners starting on the outside. They have Marcus Peters and you have Marlon Humphrey. However, there's 2 issues with those 2. They can't stay healthy. So you bring in someone like Andrew Booth, who I believe has solid to good coverage skills. I think he's more of a physical corner than he is an actual good coverage corner. He is a little stiff in his hips. I think when he's going in transition and vertical routes, I think he works well, but I think he opens the gates a little bit too quickly sometimes. However, I think he provides a lot of value as a boundary corner. You can never have too many good corners. I think he provides good length for his position. I believe he has a 76-inch wingspan for anybody that likes measurables. But however, with his size, combination of length, physicality, I think he would be a good boundary corner for the Baltimore Ravens and adds depth at that position.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But I do want to touch on something you just said, which is you can't ever have too many good corners. Well, Baltimore thought they had that last year when they traded away Chris Wade, and then a couple weeks later, both Peters and Humphrey go down. So that is it happens. I'm in the same thought process as you. I think they should go corner as well. I think Owe from Penn State last year really stepped up in becoming that new edge rusher for them. They just brought back Michael Pierce, who didn't have the greatest time in Minnesota, but I still believe he can be a really good interior lineman. Derek Wolfe, who is older, but has shown that he has ability to disrupt in the past. So as you all know, since we started this, I'm a big gambler, right? And I know Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters can't stay on the field for the most part, but I do believe that they should be able to get their health in order. And that's why I'm going with Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback out of LSU. Now, obviously, you both had him going much higher. I don't have him as high, not because of any talent concerns. I just don't know the injury history and the current medical analysis of Stingley Jr. at the moment. That's why I'm a little hesitant on him. I think you bring him into a place like Baltimore, especially when Marcus Peters is looking like he might not even make it into the season, or he might get cut after next season or not re-signed. I don't know where his contract is at the moment, but there's a good chance within the next year, 12 months, he won't be on the Baltimore Ravens anymore. You bring in a guy like that into an already experienced DB room where he can grow. I think he's going to take that defense to the next level and be one of the cornerstone pieces of this upcoming Baltimore Ravens defense. Alongside the fact you already have Patrick Queen, his LSU teammate, on the team already. So there's already a lot of communication established there. There is a bunch of great veterans in that locker room. So going back to his whole he can grow point, and the fact that, quite frankly, we don't know where Lamar Jackson is at the moment. Do I think he's going to get a contract extension? I do. But you never know, especially the fact of we don't know how much that contract is going to be. And all we know is it's going to be groundbreaking. And with that being said, you might have to get rid of Marcus Peters. And to me, Stingley Jr. is the type of guy that can step in and take that defense, either keep at the level or with Peters, take it to a new level, considering the fact that they're not going to have a lot of cash to spend these next several years. With that being said, I will throw it to you, Bill. Who are you taking if you're the Ravens? 1 second. We have some technical difficulties.
This is sort of a dream scenario for the Ravens because this is when a player they love, a player they need, and a player whose value is right exactly where it all meets is there. Jermaine Johnson, Florida State University, fits a need. The value is pretty much perfect. And he feels like a Raven, plays like a Raven, whatever to me is. there's a player type that they like, and Pernell McPhee was that type, but not as good. Like Pernell McPhee didn't have all the stuff. It didn't have all the things that, I mean, this kid, Jermaine Johnson he's got inside spin, he's got the outside spin, he's got the ice pick, he's got the arm over, he's got the hezzy swim, he's got the club rip, he's got the stab rip, he's got the long arm, he's got the ghost. I mean, like, he's like watching instructional tape on pass rush. It's like, what move don't you have? It is awesome. Super fun. And I recently rewatched NC State, Florida State, and Icky did a pretty good job against him. That's the one thing I'll say is that when he meets like the freak guys, and not that he didn't get anything done, but you could definitely tell that he was really eating against a lot of other guys. And then Icky was one of the few guys that actually gave him a lot of trouble. But I mean, not everyone is an elite athlete at the tackle position. So you probably see 3 or 4 of those guys each year, and then he'll feast against the guys who aren't as good. But his array of moves is unmatched in this entire class. Nobody the closest is probably D'Angelo Malone, but he's number one with some space in terms of just all the different moves he's got. And he's a good athlete too.
Yes. And that is a very interesting pick. I'm very high on Jermaine Johnson too. I just want to think about, like, just take a step back from the draft for a second. Obviously, the move to Florida State was perfect for him, and that's the reason why he's a first-round pick. Imagine if he was still in that Georgia defense, how much more dominant they could have been. Oh, that is something scary to think about. Jermaine Johnson also kind of funny for me and Tyler, because Tyler can attest to this. He was on one of our favorite TV shows, Last Chance U, with the notorious head coach, Jason Brown. And, he didn't get a lot of screen time, but when he was coming out of JUCO, he was one of the top ranked players in the country, if not the top ranked player in the country. So he has excelled at all levels of play. Do you have anything to add to that, Tyler?
I mean, he was the number 1 JUCO player in the country. I believe he was a bounce back. No, actually, I'm sorry. He originally went to Georgia and then went to Florida State. I mean, they didn't show too much of him on season 4 of Last Chance U, but I mean, he made his noise, especially when he went to Florida State. And that's the reason why he's going in the first round. I mean, like you said before, Bill, I mean, this guy has a big toolbox. Now, the only question is his motor. I think he has a solid to good motor. But other than that, with the tools that he brings and the athleticism that he has off the edge, I'm not saying he's an elite level pass rusher, but he will provide production, and that is what you need as a pass rusher.
Absolutely. I just want to add along to the fact that he is going to be lining up from the opposite side of Owe, and he does have a secondary that will buy him those extra seconds he needs to get in the backfield. I love Jermaine Johnson, and this is just a personal statement. I love JUCO guys. Like, don't get me wrong, you don't get to play at the D1 level by mistake. You don't get to play there by just being good on the field. You have to have that desire, that work ethic. But there's just something about JUCO guys that they have, that adversity that they've had to overcome. There's just something that's a little bit more in there that I completely love about him. So great selections by both of you. I'm gonna still stick with Derek Stingley because I'm a gambler, but I love those picks. Moving on the draft, we're gonna go 15 and 16 in this one because they're from the same team, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. So Eagles we're in this place where, like, we don't know where they are. They were undefeated against teams under 500 last season. They won 0 games against teams over 500 last season. Doesn't matter because that was good enough to sneak in the playoffs when they did get routed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It seems that they're going with Jalen Hurts for the future, especially since he is on that rookie contract. But let's be real now. Hurts has a very defined skill set. He's not going to be able to develop into that gunslinger type of person. So it's going to be very interesting to see who you guys pick. I'll start first with my 2 picks. I went offense, then defense. The first pick, we're at wide receiver, Drake London. So when you look, I think we can all agree Jalen Reagor has been a bust up to this point in his career, right? When you look at the receiver room, Devontae Smith is an absolute stud, right? He has quieted any doubts about a person of his size and stature playing in the NFL. but I still think you need that jump ball receiver, especially when you look at the game in the Meadowlands against the Giants. So many times I had opportunities to seal the deal. Ritter couldn't get it done. I think London is a guy who can get it done, so I'm going with Drake London. My next pick, defense, Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are at points in their career where they don't have a lot left. And quite frankly, whatever they do have left isn't going to be able to be on the field for all 60 plays during the game. You already gave a lot of mad money to Josh Sweat. We don't know what you're going to do with Derek Barnett, but he's still on the field. You got great playmakers at cornerback, especially with Darius Slay. And I think you just add a guy like Wyatt who can be part of that new generation of Philadelphia Eagles, that aggressive pass rush. I think that he's going to cause a lot of havoc, especially when you look at teams like Washington, like the Giants, like the Cowboys, who do have studs at receivers, at the receiver position. You're going to need to get into that backfield quick. I think he can help cause havoc, and also clearly he can help stop the run against guys like Tony Pollard. I don't want to say Ezekiel Elliott anymore because he has taken a fall off, but guys like Antonio Gibson, McKissick, and such. So I'm going with those two guys. I'm going to throw it to you, Bill. Who are you going with the 15th and 16th overall picks?
I'm going to go with. I've been fighting with myself back and forth. I think that they decide to get even more explosive on offense. I think Jameson Williams, once again, I wouldn't take him this high, but we know nothing else about Howie Roseman. He's not risk averse. So I think he rolls the dice a bit and takes a shot at Jameson Williams, and then follows it up with George Karlaftis, who gives them a young pass rusher that they desperately need. They have another situation where their best players on defense are their oldest players on defense, and that's not really an ideal situation. Cox and Cleat to come back for one more year, but it's basically clearly a sort of thank you and goodbye year. They won't be able to afford him again next year, and more likely they'll let him walk anyway, because, as I said, the team is in transition. But I think that he's a good fit for what they like to do on defense. And once again, rookie, which means they can afford him. Sometimes you look at your team and say, we need this at this position. And obviously we talked about other players they have that are developing. And if indeed they can get, guys like, is it Burns I'm thinking of? No, not Brian Burns. No, it's Josh Sweat, right?
Who are you talking about?
I'm sure, it was Sweat they drafted a couple of drafts ago, right?
Josh Sweat.
Yeah,
Yes.
Josh Sweat, right. So between Josh Sweat and Karlaftis, now you've got two young, up-and-coming, affordable pass rushers, and they can devote, most of the rest of this draft to continue to add talent on offense. And then Jameson Williams gives you a guy that you can pair with Devontae. Devontae, I think you're going to at some point move into the slot, if not permanently, then at least at times. Now you can put Jameson Williams outside, and they're to the same side of the field. You're creating a bind for the defense. You're going to want to help over the top. It's hard to help both over the top if they are on the same side of the field. So yeah, you can create some real problems to the defense. So that's what I'm going with there.
Yes, excellent pick. So Tyler, who are you going to go with?
So I'm going to go ahead and say that I really like the Drake London pick, first of all, because I believe, even though I want to go receiver here, and I will in just a second, I believe out of all the receivers in the draft, he fits that situation the best, because Jalen Hurts is not the most accurate quarterback. And now if you want to give your young quarterback who struggles with accuracy the best chance to succeed, you want a big target. However, he is not there. So I will go with Chris Olave for my wide receiver. Provides a great athleticism. I think his route running is extremely underrated. Very smooth when running routes. Great burst out of his breaks. That initial burst off the line of scrimmage is very good. He's a great compliment to Devontae Smith. And my next pick will be George Karlaftis. True 4-3 defensive end. Will play behind Brandon Graham, who is aging. I think he can still play at, I wouldn't say a high level, but I think he's still a good player in the NFL, and he's a great guy to learn from. Carlatis has an explosive first step. I think that is the one elite trait you can build off of. Good athleticism off the edge, more of like a pure pass rusher. My only question about him is his length. He doesn't have the ideal length to play off the edge. As a 5 technique, I mean, you want to see him stack and shed more. Like you mentioned, Bill, that is it's almost an extinct art form. I mean, even just in my experience from scouting in, at the high school level, I mean, you don't see too many kids doing that these days. I mean, it's just, it's a lot of these fancy pass rush moves. You don't see too many guys in a 4-3 system playing, with stack and shed, trying to, actually play their gap responsibility. So I think he's a raw prospect, but I think this is a very good situation for him to play behind a seasoned veteran in Brandon Graham. So those are my 2 picks for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Fair. I like that pick a lot. I think we're all really high on Karlaftis coming into this draft, and for very good reason. I also want to add that it's going to make more sense of my argument when it comes to my 19th overall pick, which is the Eagles' 3rd, which is, if you look at the history of the Eagles, the only time they were able to win a Super Bowl is when they had 5 to 6 phenomenal players out of the defensive line. You had Vinnie Curry, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Chris Long, Barnett. And I know they had another guy, I can't think of his name right now. But you have all those tools to get to the quarterback. That's going to serve you well, especially when you have a guy like Hurts, who might not be able to put up the 28 to 35 points per game you need to win come crunch time. That concludes our first episode of the 2022 NFL Draft Preview. Thank you to Bill Carroll, Tyler Fukuroda, and Jackson Danner for coming on the show. You can catch episode 2 shortly. I would also like to thank everyone for watching. We will be doing picks 17 to 32 on our next episode, and then we will be following up with a 3rd episode consisting of our top 10 list, top 5 quarterbacks, our top 5 day 2, day 3 guys, our unknown prospects, and which teams could trade up or trade down or trade back into the first round. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.